Today, London's rental crisis is barking mad. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics, our latest post covering finance and property news. Today, I want to discuss a little bit about the UK property market, seeing as I'm here now. And there was actually a very interesting article in the AFR which spoke specifically about the rental situation in London. And frankly, the property market here in London and more broadly across the UK and in Australia have horrible resonances, specifically, of course, in the rental sector. And in fact, the article was headed, "London's rental crisis is barking mad." And it said Guy Gittings is the CEO of Foxtons, a famously sharp-elbowed chain of London real estate agents. When he fronted his shareholders last month to deliver the firm's profit result, he had a good story to tell. A housing market downturn means sales revenues were almost flat, but Foxtons still booked double-digit earnings growth. The reason? Income from lettings rose 17% last year, thanks to a 20% surge in rental prices. Surprisingly, though, Gittings wasn't crowing about this bonanza. Presenting the result, he called the London rental market unhealthy and said it was only getting worse. And speaking later on the BBC, he sympathised with renters forced to move further out from the city and having to compromise on the property type or location. Estate agents across London are seeing all the usual signs of a rental market under stress. Dozens of applicants reach property, queues around the block for viewings, listings closing within hours, would-be tenants offering more than the landlord asks, but this time the anecdotes are more extreme. In desperation, people are offering landlords 24-month contracts and are bidding on flats even before viewing them. Tenants are often now expected to provide not just details of their capacity to pay. Some landlords require an annual salary, 20 or 30 times the monthly rent, but also information on lifestyle and domestic habits. If prospective tenants have a dog, some agents or landlords want a pet CV, with evidence that the animal has been professionally house-trained. The squeeze is also on those already in rental accommodation. Many renters say landlords are jacking up rents by 20% or even 30% on a non-negotiable take it or leave it basis. The average percentage of salary a tenant now pays in rent has reached almost 50%, up from 43% 2 years ago. There are no signs of the rental market slowing down due to the continuing imbalance between supply and demand. The Telegraph recently quoted James Reddington, Sales and Letting Director at West London agents Douglas and Gordon, as saying, "We've seen the highest rent increases for decades and we don't expect this to slow down in the short term." Imbalance would seem like an understatement. A better word would be crunch. Property website Rightmove says demand for two-bedroom flats has risen 59% in the past year, while supply has dropped 35%. Tenants are at the sticky end of this imbalance. But what about landlords? You'd think they would be dancing all the way to the bank. In fact, though, the rental squeeze kicked off because landlords have been rushing for the exit. 1/3 of London landlords plan to reduce the number of properties they let, a February survey commissioned by the National Residential Landlords Association shows. The most obvious reason is that landlords' mortgages are becoming unaffordable following 11 straight interest rate increases from the Bank of England. This is more than double the average interest-only mortgage bill, and even stiff rental increases would struggle to cover that. And then there is a host of regulatory and tax changes in recent years that changed the economics of the sector, known in Britain as buy-to-let. Landlords have just a few years to ensure their performance gets a minimum energy performance certificate rating of C on a scale of 8G, and there are also more stringent requirements to establish that their tenants are bona fide British residents. And they also face a new 3% stamp duty surcharge. But the big killer has been that landlords can no longer use their mortgage payment as a tax deduction against their rental income. This came into full force in 2021, which not uncoincidentally is when the rental squeeze started to brew. Landlords are also worried about another round of legislative change in the pipeline. This will limit them to one rent increase a year and will potentially remove fixed-term tenancies in favour of making all rentals periodic. The bill will also remove landlords' ability to make no-fault evictions, although it will give them a wider and more flexible range of reasons why they can evict. Observers hope that the travails of the buy-to-rent market might be offset by the emerging build-to-rent sector, which has attracted the likes of Lend-Lease and Macquarie Group. But property firm JLL recently reported that just over 10,900 build-to-rent properties were completed last year, so that sector looks like some way off from delivering in full. And as the housing market starts to cool, transaction volumes have dived, and house prices have dropped by more than 10% from a year ago, fewer landlords have the option to exit the market. That has some agents expecting the rental supply crunch to abate this year. The prediction is that rents will climb about 5% this year, down from the 17% growth of 2022. Although the fierce competition among tenants to find a home is starting to ease, it is still double the level it was back in 2019, Rightmove executive Tim Bannister recently told The Telegraph. So, if you're coming to London and plan to rent, come armed with plenty of money, plenty of patience, and of course, a pet CV. And this, of course, really underscores that the property crisis that we see in Australia is being mirrored in other Western countries too, not only due to the wildly gyrating interest rate moves, but more broadly that the legislative frameworks that are in place and the expectation that the private sector will provide rental is actually the root cause of the problem. This is another structural problem. It's being replicated around the world, and frankly, I haven't yet seen any good solutions. And by the way, I don't think build to rent is actually a good solution at all, because what tends to happen there is that the commercial interests outweigh everything else, the costs of rent rise, and in fact, the ability to meet the demands also probably won't be there. So this is a crisis that has been created by a generation of poor structural planning, and frankly, I don't see any change at the moment. Not good for landlords, not good for tenants. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.